Okay, guys, so here's my top 5 tips for beginners in sim racing and also iRacing, because I mainly make iRacing content, but this is all applicable to sim racing too. These are also top 5 mistakes that beginners could be making. So watch through to the end, see if this could be you making some of these mistakes. I know these are sort of things that aren't easy to fix, but even just being aware of them is a huge win. So don't be worried that if you make some of these mistakes, and even if you find it hard to shake some of them, because the first step in trying to correct some of these is just by being aware of the problem and being aware when it happens. Notice when it happens and go, hey, look, I know that happened. I saw I was doing this. I know I shouldn't be doing that, but I did it. So being aware is a big step. Don't worry about if you can't do it just yet, but knowing about it first is the first step to being aware about it, and being aware about it is the first step to not doing it. So let's get into it. The first tip is a pretty simple one, but it's also a very tough one, because when you're sim racing, you're trying to get a fast time. You're trying to be competitive, you're trying to be quicker, you're trying to push yourself, maybe over the limit, into a mistake, crashing your car, getting out of the race, all those things. So when I talk about the delta bar, what I mean is in iRacing, in let's say Formula 1 or all different games, they have a different way of measuring time. In iRacing, it's very simple. There's a delta bar. When it goes green, you're doing good. You're in negative time, which means you're going quicker than your last time. Or it goes red, you're in positive time, which means you're going slower than your last lap. Or whatever your reference lap is. Whether it's your all-time best, your last lap, or your optimal lap, which your optimal lap means it's the best possible lap you could have done, adding all your best possible sectors together that you've already done. Now, the thing is, the problem with this delta bar is that you can look at it for too much. You gotta worry for too long. You gotta focus on not looking at your delta bar all the time. The biggest mistake you'll do is you'll be trying to do a hot lap or a quali lap, and you will hit the delta bar. You will hit turn 1, amazing. Smoke it. Do so well. You look at your delta bar and you're up 2/10. And then you get this feeling, you're like, oh, this lap is it. Your blood pressure rises, your heart rate goes up, your hands get tighter. Don't do this. Do not do this, because what's going to happen is you're going to mess up, and when you mess up, something bad happens. Then you try to make up for your mistakes on the next corner, where technically that's not possible, because you can only take a corner so well. That's it. You can't overdrive the car. You're not a magician. You can't just like shit out 2/10 just because you lost 2/10 on the last corner. And if you do this, don't worry about it, because I was watching a podcast a while ago with Alexander Albon. He's a Formula 1 driver. Obviously a Formula 1 driver. Why was I thinking about it? He's an F1 driver, and he was talking about his time when he was with Max Verstappen. And he said knowing that he was qualifying up against Max was the toughest thing ever, because he said he was at Brazil one year and he was making a lot of mistakes, like a lot of mistakes. And he'd done the same thing I said. In qualifying, he was looking at his delta bar. He has his very expensive steering wheel. He's looking at his steering wheel, and his delta bar is getting good. He's looking at it. He's there thinking, oh my God, I'm up. All right, I got to compound this. I got to go. I need to do the next corner even better. I got to do magic. And usually trying to do magic in a car and exceed the limit usually leads to incidents. That's what he said he did. He said he made lots of mistakes, and he said even if an F1 driver did this now, bear in mind, he said he lost time on a few corners, and he'd actually try to make it back up on the next corners. And remember what I said, you can't just magically make time appear. There's only one good way to take a corner, and there's only so much time you can gain in the corner. You can't find lost time in a corner. That's it. It's a lap. It's a package. Now, to end the whole Albano story just real quick, he did say his time at Red Bull was very good. He learned a lot being on the edge, and it was nice to take a step back, and he wants to slowly progress back up to the top now. He felt he was too soon, all this kind of stuff. But it's just an example to show that even a top level driver can make the mistake of just staring at the time too much. And the quick fix for this is to turn off the delta bar. But I know what you're probably thinking. Why turn off the delta bar? You won't be able to see your progress and your speed. When your delta bar is off, you don't look at it. You focus on your corner, you focus on your entry, you focus on your exit, you focus on your turn-in point. We'll get to that in a minute. You focus on what you need to focus on. You look at the lap as a whole. You find out your time when you cross the line. Very simple. And when you're not looking at the delta bar, that means you're not trying to hot lap. And when you're not hot lapping, that means you can go into autopilot. And autopilot is where the learning happens. Autopilot is where the consistency comes from. And autopilot is where the light hands come from. And If you're constantly trying to try new things with your muscles, your muscle memory isn't going to happen. And with sim racing, it's all about muscle memory. So knowing that, we want to be as relaxed as we can. And just a little pro tip here is to relax your jaw. So you can, when your jaw's relaxed, your whole body relaxes. If your jaw's tense, everything's tense. Some people chew gum, some people just focus on just making sure their mouth is just dropped and relaxed. That's how that works. So make sure you relax, autopilot, and don't stare at your delta, because if you stare at your delta, you're just going to destroy your race. You're losing out on milliseconds, because every time you look up, that's time you're not looking at the track. So if you're leaving a corner and you're not even done your exit and you're looking at the delta bar, there you have it. Focus less on that and set it to something easy like last lap. Don't be comparing against your all-time best, because the track changes, the car changes, or just turn it off altogether and have a good time. The second tip is not having a fixed turn-in point. This does sound like an intermediate tip, but it's worth trying to note to turn in at the same time every time, because if sometimes you're nailing a corner and then sometimes you're messing it up, more than likely your issue is your turning point's wrong. It's inconsistent. You're turning in at different times. And what I mean by that is you brake in a straight line into your corner, and when you're done braking, the time where you choose, I'm going to start to turn, you need to actually think about that spot. Where is it going to be? Is it going to be where the curb ends? Is it going to be like a few stripes before the curb ends? Is it where there's like a white line on the track? Have a reference point, and this gets into our next tip, but you need to know where you want to turn into a corner. Very, very important. For our third mistake that some beginners could be making is by not having braking reference points. Braking reference points is a point in the track where you know you're going to brake. Very simple. Let's say the 100-meter board, the 50-meter board, the 60-meter board. It's a physical point that doesn't move, not like a shadow, not like dirt on the track that could be moved, not like a puddle on the track that can be moved. It's a physical reference point. It's a point that you reference, that you know that's where I'm going to brake. Or it can be a point that you know, hey, just as my nose is pulling up to this point, I brake. Let's say, for example, as I approach a curb, just before I hit the curb, that's where I brake. And then you play around that point, and then next lap you go, okay, well, I had a bit more distance. I found I lifted too early off the brakes. So I tell you what, I'm going to brake a little bit later. I'm going to brake at the curb when my front wing is at the curb, and then try that. And then you work from there. But you need to have a static reference point of where you're going to brake. If you're basic, this is from, I'm no pro, but just from an intermediate driver to a basic or another intermediate driver, make sure you have a static reference point. Even when you do, it's easy to fall out of this habit and start braking by feel. Just being like, oh, this feels right. Some corners you have to do that. Some corner there is no reference point at all. And I was curious about this. I researched, what do professional drivers do in corners where there's no reference point? And they count. Some of them actually count. It's fucking insane, isn't it? They leave a corner and they count 4, 3, 2, 1, brake or turn in. They count in their head. So that's how they find the consistency. They don't leave anything to feel or to chance or, oh, go on, I'll just do this. They count to get that consistency. So there are ways to find it. Sometimes you got to do it by feel, though. Like the Nürburgring sometimes can be by feel until you're really pushing for that last bit. Because there's so many corners, you take it as a flow. You don't really try and nail every corner. But let's say Monza, for example, where there's only so many corners, that's where you're going to find the time. So having a static reference point where you choose to brake, really, really important. The fourth tip is that you don't want to be using your driving line longer than you should. The driving line is great when you don't know a track. The driving line is great when you don't know even the basics of how to go quick, which in that case, it's fine. When you're still learning, if I turn right, I want to be on the left side of the track because that means I can carry more speed. By all means, leave it on. But once you get to a point where you're being a bit consistent, you're a second or two off the pace and you're really getting faster on the track, it's time to turn it off because one, it's sim racing. It'll be a lot more immersive when there's no virtual line on the track and all you see is tarmac. I'm a bit weird like that. I do like to just see tarmac. I don't like the driving line, even if it's a new track. I prefer to have accidents, crashes. I like to discover it without the driving line. That's just me. Some people will say it's great to have. But once you're ready to get rid of it, get rid of it. And you'll know this once you're starting to look for the little bits of time, couple of tenths, you're looking for the last second, you want to start using braking reference points, have a fixed turn-in point, have a fixed apex that you stare at on the corner, and have a fixed exit point. So when your eyes come into a corner, it's simple. You know, you see your braking marker, you know where you're going to brake. The closer to where you're physically going to brake, the better. Like if you're looking at a tree all the way over there, it's tough to judge. But let's say there's a black stain on the road, it's a lot easier to look straight and brake straight on your marker because it's dead in front of you. And then again, you come in, you turn in at the point that you know. So when the curb ends, I turn in, and then you straighten up, and then you look towards the exit after your apex. It's very simple. You can't do that with the driving line because it distracts you. It goes red, it goes green, it goes white when you need to lift. And it's to help beginners, but it's not to help people really get fast. So once you realize that the driving line will kind of slow you down after a while, as well as break all the immersion, that's when you will start to level up your speed, get a lot quicker, and start using points that will mean you can brake faster, get in the power sooner, and you can turn in more consistently. So the driving line, unfortunately, if you're able to get rid of it, it's gotta go. And the last tip, this is a bit of a fun one, but like not a lot of people know this. This is maybe more specific for iRacing, but I know you can use it in other sims where people can talk, is have a mute button. There's a mute button. If you look in the settings in iRacing, go to your volume settings, the sound settings for your spotter, your in-game sounds, and your headset sounds, and your voice comm sounds, like the radio sounds. In the radio section, there'll be a louder, there's a quieter button, and there's also a mute button. Press that. Press M on your keyboard, and that way if people are talking too much and arguing and it's putting you off your race, press M. Don't bother about getting involved, telling them to shut up and I'm trying to race. Just press M, mute them, and then turn it back on just in case there's any funny arguments you want to listen to and you're already dialed in and you're not worried about being distracted. So you can mute people in iRacing, which is pretty important, and that can make a big difference, especially when you're trying to focus on all these new things. Lots of new things are coming to you. They're just five little mistakes you could be making. Hopefully it helped you. If it did, leave a like, and yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting recently on the videos. So if you're subscribed, thanks so much, and if you're not, consider subscribing. Plenty more videos to come, and yeah, happy hunting, guys. Thanks for watching.